The Spot Track Podcast, talking sports contracts, the salary cap, and business of sports.
Welcome to the SpotTrack.com podcast. I'm Kevin Sylvester along with Paul Peck from BuffaloSportsPage.com, along with the founder of SpotTrack.com, Mike Giannetti, and we are going to talk NBA offseason. I still wore the Cavs hat even though they got swept. And we'll talk about LeBron James in a moment. We'll put him aside for a second, hand injury and everything.
By the way, it was amazing to watch, but I'm still having a hard time wrapping my head around the fact that the Warriors were so good, so much better than the Cavs, that a a championship matchup could be so one-sided in any professional sport. I just have a little bit of a heart. You know what I'm saying? I mean, the Warriors were twice as good as the Cavs.
And everybody knew that going in.
I know. Well, maybe that's what makes it a little weirder, too. You just expect a championship to be much more competitive because you expect the two best teams in a 30-plus team league to be relatively close to each other.
You know what's funny, though? I'm not sure they belong there. I think if Chris Paul's healthy, Houston wins that series.
They could have.
That's even more interesting
I think
to say.
That's getting left out of the conversation here is that, it's not just two teams right now. I think Houston's a legitimate team. I'm hearing they're going to sign Chris Paul back to a maximum deal, and if that's the case, why can't they do this again?
Yeah, well, right? Or I guess I could also say to you that if J.R. Smith knew what the score was, it might have been a lot different series as well, too.
So yes, I agree. They needed to win game one.
Yeah.
Because it would have extended the series and would have put it's about momentum. And then LeBron probably wouldn't have punched a blackboard.
You think?
Right, and injured his hand. Right. That happened,
which limited his effectiveness for the following games.
But we're going to talk about the Warriors.
Yes.
Right. I mean, here's a team that's won the championship 3 of the last 4 years. Unbelievable shooting team. Like, when they get hot, it's just like they don't miss.
Right.
It's an unbelievable balanced team, too.
It's balanced, but I think your point about how much farther ahead they are than the Cavaliers is relevant here because that's going to come into play as they start to get into the future here, right? 2-3 years down the road. I mean, they're a dynasty now. I think that's arguable, right? I mean, they're a dynasty.
I'd still take the Bulls.
Right.
I'd take the Pistons.
We're not going to go there.
I'd take the Celtics, and I'd take the Lakers.
Really?
Yes, I would.
Just because of the style of play.
Well, yes.
I mean, a lot of people just don't like this 3-point, soft, sit back there and shoot kind of play.
I'm one of them.
All right.
I'm one of them.
Let's put that aside.
But I admire, you can't deny what they've done.
That's right. And for at least one more year, I think they're going to be perfectly fine just as they are. But you're going to get to a point where this is going to bend, right? If not break. And it's going to happen because of money, like it always does. But there's going to be a point now where Klay Thompson's not getting enough shots, or Draymond Green's not getting enough publicity, or something, right? Something's going to happen.
It's all good when you're winning.
Right? I mean, there was already some speculation that there were some locker room issues this year, which, of course there are. I mean, these are all, these are 4 or 5 of the most richest players in the league, and, the most successful. Success breeds ego. It's just how it works with this.
It's kind of like this podcast. Like, you wait
That's
2
right.
years down the road.
Right. This is 33. When we get to 100.
You watch Peck's head grow out of those headphones, man. All right.
Right. But the essence of team building with how this has to progress is going to become extremely intriguing. It's going to be something we're all going to be watching because they're going to have to make a major change. It's inevitable. There's going to have to be something that falls here because you can't pay 4 to 5 guys the amount of money that it takes to keep their production on the court. Eventually, Klay Thompson's going to say, hey, I'm one of the best 3-point shooters in the history of the game. All right. And yeah, I can take $20 million a year, but I'm worth 35. Right. And Detroit would pay him 35 tomorrow.
He's a bit one-dimensional in that regard, but he's great at the one dimension he does. So can the Warriors justify paying whatever it takes to keep him, even though he is a bit of a niche player?
My answer is no.
Okay.
I mean, if you've read my article and what we're about to discuss here, my answer is he's the piece that falls, and I think he falls sooner than later. I haven't heard it. I haven't heard it discussed. I don't know if it'll get discussed in the next month or so. But for me, Klay Thompson's on the trade block right now, just based on the fact that he's got one more year before he will walk, essentially. I mean, that's what he wants. He wants to be able to walk and go and get whatever he wants, because it makes no sense for him to sign a contract right now. None. In terms of staying here on a team that might not be able to afford him down the road, and 2, just the way that the salary cap is working right now, anybody who's extending themselves now is missing tons of money next summer. It's just sort of the way the structure is laying out. So I don't expect him in a contract to be any kind of discussion in the next 2 months. But I do think a trade discussion should be had because this is a guy. Look, he's not replaceable.
Right.
I mean, he's arguably the best shooter on a team that has the best all-time shooter of all time. Right? I mean, Steph Curry is maybe the best basketball shooter in the history of basketball.
He's definitely the best in the Curry family.
Okay, all
right.
That's a fair
he surpassed his dad, Dell.
Right, but I think Klay might be better. I think Klay at times, most of the time, is a better shooter than Steph Curry, just on an accurate standpoint. So how do you trade that guy? Right? Well, because of what you said. Because he's sort of one-dimensional. Right? He's a hell of a defensive player too. Let's not get away from that. So he's got that going as well. But in terms of what he does on the court, shoots threes, plays strong defense, you should be able to replace that with 2 or 3 guys that add up to the amount of money Klay Thompson is worth. And that's back to the depth situation we've talked about with hockey and with football and the other sports. Basketball is going to have to get there, right? Because the salary cap is X, and your superstars are making not much less than X, right? So, you know, and that's the design. You want to be able to have teams that have a couple of stars, but not too many stars. And I think we're getting to a point now where Golden State has too many stars in terms of how much they're actually worth.
Would Klay Thompson be a star without Durant and Curry?
I don't think he cares. I don't think he cares.
Well, I know he doesn't care.
Right?
I'm saying, but if I'm a GM looking to sign him, I'm like, well, wait a second. You know, you're getting all those open looks because they're trying to pick, do I key on Curry? Do I key on Durant? I don't want them to beat me. I'm going to let Klay Thompson try and beat me.
I'm going to drop an old school football reference on you here because this is what pops into my head immediately. Alvin Harper. Remember Alvin Harper?
Right. Sure. Yes.
Classic example for people that follow football. He was the number 2 receiver to Michael Irvin, put up huge numbers, decided he wanted to grab the money and the fame.
Tennessee?
Tampa Bay at one point, too.
Right. That's right.
And was never close to the same player was because it had more to do with being on a team with Emmett and Michael than it ever did Alvin Harper.
I'll give you a modern one.
And the opposite side of that was Reggie Wayne, by the way.
Oh,
because of Marvin Harrison.
Had to move.
Yes.
Yeah.
Modernized one, Julius Thomas.
There you go. Great one.
Guy who got in the end zone every play in Denver with Peyton Manning. He leaves, and he's literally out of the league.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where that went.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
it's a great question. All right, so we haven't even – we'll get into Durant more in a moment, but while we're on the topic of Klay Thompson, I think it relates very interestingly to Draymond Green, a guy who does a lot of things really well. Maybe arguably none of them great, but a lot of things really well. Very much a heart and soul guy. Those are the guys that teams have a hard time figuring out what they're worth. Whoa. And it seems to me, ultimately, when you have decisions to make about all these other guys, it's sometimes the guys that do a lot of things really well and nothing great that wind up being the ones that get pushed out.
I think Draymond Green's worth more to the Warriors than Klay Thompson is.
Yeah, so this is this is a situation where I actually don't look at the money, right, with Draymond Green because of everything you just said. It's impossible to value that guy, but he's also irreplaceable. You know,
point.
That was an absolute steal. This entire team are draft steals, and that's a discussion we'll have here. But Draymond Green is a total outlier. I mean, you hear heart, big heart, big motor, all those terms you hear around draft time, but you hear it all the time with, just guys that we have no idea what their end game is. Draymond Green was a good player in a great school. I mean, Michigan State. I mean, he was a featured player in a March Madness tournament. So we all knew him, and we all sort of assumed he had a ceiling in terms of his production, right? But Golden State said we don't want any of it. We don't even need that. We don't need production out of him. We need everything else, and that's why he stays for me. That's why Klay Thompson is on the trade block, and a guy like him can't be because
of the ability to replace them, right? As you've said,
he does everything that the other guys won't do.
Yeah,
and that's why you can't lose him.
I'll use another Green. A while ago, AC Green, right?
Great example.
From the Lakers, but remember, he went to the Suns, and he did it for Charles Barkley, right? I mean, so just willing to do all the dirty work there, could get up and down the floor, run the break, was every now and then he'd chip in offensively, but, did all the things. Those are the invaluable players, players that are willing to do it.
I love I'm not sure that you have to tell me whether you guys think it's on base or not, but I love some of the comparisons of Draymond Green to Dennis Rodman.
Yeah.
I think Draymond Green's a way better and more versatile player, but what he does and the ability for Dennis Rodman to do it almost everywhere was what made his career so amazing.
Wouldn't you have loved to have seen Dennis Rodman match up against LeBron?
Yeah.
No, you're talking about Dennis Rodman played unbelievable defense.
He was so fun to watch just because everything looked wrong.
Yes.
And it worked out right. I mean, watching him shoot a layup was painful. I mean,
yes.
He had absolutely no form, but yeah, he was one of those players, the same thing. You kind of knew what you were getting and you loved it. You needed it.
And now he's trying to win. And now he's helping forge peace in the world.
That's right.
Of course.
But those
crying on CNN.
That's the likely translation.
Those are the guys that are keys to championships, right?
Yes.
You need shooters, you need rebounders, you need scorers, but you need a guy who does everything else well. Hey, today we need you to play defense. Today we need you to rebound. Today, Draymond, we need you to pop a couple shots in. I mean, that's what those guys are so invaluable.
I worry, though, that as this sort of progresses, right, there's about an 18-month span here where this all has to get figured out before, the train falls off the track in terms of the cap and the money for all this. I just worry. I don't know him personally, but it sure seems like he can get heady, Draymond Green, right? So does ego actually become an issue here to where he talks himself off this team?
Is he tired of being the complimentary piece?
He knows he's more than, just a piece. He knows he's the glue here. He gets it. I mean, he's put in the time and the effort, and he understands his role. But at some point, that role is going to be worth something.
Well, he wants to get paid. He's won championships now. I think the point maybe you're getting at here, especially with Klay Thompson and Draymond Green, because Curry's being paid, Durant's is being paid, and will be paid.
Yep.
Both those guys are still going to be paid.
Yep.
Thompson and Green they've won championships, so they don't need to take one for the team anymore, is probably what they're thinking, and their agents probably telling them, like, look, you've won titles. You've cemented that part of it. Now it's time to get paid.
I just think it'll be extremely interesting to see how the Warriors sort of rank this, right? Because, it'll probably be easier to deal with Klay Thompson, right? Because you can say, well, we're getting threes out of this guy. Right? So there's a little bit of a devaluation in terms of his role on the team, not defensively. I mean, that's another elephant in the room. But it'll be a little easier to deal with Klay Thompson. Yes, they're both going to want max money. They're both going to walk in the room and say, I'm worth this because of this, and I've won this and all this, of course. But I think the two of them coming down the same track in terms of their financial needs will be extremely interesting because Golden State's going to have to pick. And when the person they don't pick, that next stop is going to be extremely interesting, right? If Draymond Green's in Boston, right, wherever he ends up,
I think
if
he
he's the guy to
translates like
fall.
Rodman. I really do.
Well, because all the guys you've talked about have had to move.
Yeah,
Right.
They've had to go. The team eventually said, we can't do it anymore.
Can't afford it anymore.
The price breaks it, right? So, look, right now I'm saying Klay's the guy to go. That might not be what they're thinking. So that's something to watch over the next 12 to 18 months here. You mentioned Durant. Let's talk Durant. Because he's sort of the first element of all of this. He
has the ability to opt out this year?
He already did.
Okay.
He did
but
it like a month ago.
indicated that he's not planning on leaving, right?
He's going to be
back.
back.
Does that change at all?
He's going to be back. No, I can't imagine. I can't imagine. I mean, obviously there's a lot that has to happen in this offseason, and it's possible that something sways him differently. But for purposes of right now, let's just say he's coming back. But how he comes back is extremely important to everything else we've already talked about. And that's sort of where this article and this episode today sort of derived from, right? So Durant did a 1 year plus a player option the last time around. He took a pay cut. $25 million. A guy like that should be worth, making 40, 45 right now. So he's limited in what he can make, but I'm more concerned about how long he signs for, because it's possible he comes back and does another 1 year deal, and then we're doing this all over again next summer. But it's also possible he comes back and does a 2 year deal with a player option. And if he does that, then he aligns himself with Draymond Green. Right? So if he does the 1 year deal, he's aligning himself with Klay Thompson. If he does a 2 year deal, he's aligning himself with Draymond Green. That's very important in how all of this sort of progresses in terms of how the Warriors are staying together, because he's going to be persuaded by Bob Myers and those executives to do one or the other based on their plans. So we're gonna know one way or another based on what I've written here in terms of Durant's situation, and it's really not about money. I mean, I don't expect him to take any kind of pay cut this time around, right? If he does a 1 year deal, he can make 30. If he does a 2 year deal, he can make 35 next year. So, that's why I expect a 2 year deal. But if Klay Thompson's in their future, it's definitely going to be a 2 year deal, because they're going to want to sign Klay Thompson next year, right? He's going to be the guy who's up next year. And they're not going to do it this year because he won't sign this year. Signing this year loses him like $80 million. So he's going to wait till next summer, and they're not going to want to have to sign Durant and Klay Thompson with Draymond Green on an expiring contract next summer. So it's kind of becoming a spider web in terms of how this all has to get worked out. My guess is Bob Myers already knows exactly what he's going to do. And he's already talked to Kevin Durant's agent and Kevin Durant personally and said, this is what we need you to do because obviously we don't want you to go anywhere. So my guess is there's a plan in place. But my point in sort of writing this piece is everything's going to have an effect, right? So based on how Durant's contract comes out in the next month, we're going to sort of know. And if it's a 1-year deal, if it's a 1 year plus a player option, that's to me looking like Klay Thompson's got either 1 year and he's out of here, or he's on the trade block right now, and July 1st might be very, very interesting.
Now, don't you think the Warriors will be pushing for a 2-year deal for Durant at least because they have a new arena opening up in 2019-2020 season?
And a huge cash influx that's going to come with that, too.
Well, we'll talk cash in a second here, but to me, I don't know about you guys, it just seems like Durant's going nowhere. Forever.
Yeah, why would he?
Right? I mean, him and Curry are here.
Unless he wants to be the man somewhere else. I mean, that's always the argument here, isn't it?
But isn't he already the man? I mean, Steph Curry doesn't play with too much of an ego.
No, you're right.
And that's not going to improve because he doesn't want to play. He doesn't want to play defense. He's
right.
gonna.
That was pretty clear in the finals.
He's only going to get older, and
yes.
he's going to become very one-dimensional. And Durant's just going to be the everything guy. I mean, he's going to be LeBron eventually, where he's going to have to take over games and things like that. But I just think, and to sort of, Kevin, to your point, if it's just Steph Curry and Durant and a couple of other guys, isn't that enough?
They're still. I mean,
aren't they still
contender.
a 3 seed?
Yes.
Right. Look, they've done a lot of things right. And I just think to imagine they're going to keep these 4 to 5 guys together for even 2 more years is silly. And there's a big reason for that, and it's called the luxury tax. All right? And without getting into too many specifics and too much math because, we all kind of sort of trail off, they've already paid an unbelievable amount of tax in terms of how that works. So there's a tax cap. If you go over, you pay fines based on how far you go over. If you go over multiple years in a row, it's like a duplicate fine, right? They duplicate, they double everything. That's going to happen. They were over this year. They're already going to be over next year no matter what they do. Even if they trade Klay Thompson, they're going to be over. So they're in tax hell, essentially, and it's going to cost them...
No, they're New York State.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, even worse.
California is worse, which is hard to believe there's a worse state than New York,
Good
but
point.
it's California.
But you mentioned the new stadium. There's TV deals and all that's going on. They're bleeding cash. They're making as much as possible. They're selling out season tickets to Silicon Valley, customers, and they're doing everything they need to do. They're winning, but they're going to pay over $100 million in luxury tax fines this year.
Wow,
which is obviously never happened before. But it's just based on the salaries that exist.
And I don't think, and after winning another championship, I don't think anybody there regrets it for a second.
That's a couple less diamonds on the ring. Just saying.
So yeah, possibly, unless the players pay for it. Yeah. So this would be the second year of tax fines. They're looking at a third, right? I mean, the 2019-20 season isn't looking any better, which brings Draymond Green into the conversation, right? If they've got to get themselves under that tax level, but depending on how high the cap goes, which people are saying about 120 is probably a max, that's where it's going to get real fun. Because if they need to get back under the tax limit and be able to salvage some of this cash, which any business owner would want to do eventually, you can bleed it for a little bit here, but eventually it's going to have to stop. Then we may get to a situation where we've just mentioned here, where Durant and Steph are going to have to be enough, and everybody else is going to have to be, draft picks and veteran minimums and things like that. And we'll just kind of see what we can do with that. But yeah, I give this a 2-year plan maximum. Like I said, Klay Thompson might be out the door in the next month by July 1st, but it is not about not wanting these guys to stay together. It's just that luxury tax. It's a massive, massive fine, and they've already paid a ton, and they're going to pay a ton more this year. So,
all right, let's move to the player they beat on the team, and I want to be fair, they beat the Cavaliers, but LeBron James is the guy everybody's wondering.
How do you not talk about this, right?
June 29th, and he has not indicated what he's going to do either way. Whether or not he's going to opt in to stay with the Cavaliers, whether or not he is going to explore the free agent market. There's also the opt in and be traded option for the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Which I'm hearing more and more of, which is good. I like this. Here's where I stand, and we'll kind of spin it around the room here. Just to start with, this player option, this $35.6 million player option, it's the second highest salary in the league for 2018. So it's not like it's chump change. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I mean, it's where he belongs. So there's no if he says I'm just going to opt in and see what happens next year, I think no one would scoff at that. I think that's maybe the favorite option right now. I think, right? Because then they'd have all year to trade him.
Right.
You know?
Yes.
If they needed to do that. Right? Let's make this work for everybody, but best for me, because he's going to dictate it.
Correct.
Obviously, you know.
But so you're saying he'll have some level of loyalty to at least allow the Cavaliers, if he decides he doesn't want to stay there, to at least rescue themselves from in some way.
I'm going to guess he wouldn't be thinking in that way. That seems pretty generous. I just think he would give himself time to let them and him work out the best trade for him. Right? This is exactly where I want to go. I want to make sure these guys are there with me. You're not getting those guys off that team. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's all got to sort of work for him. But to that point, my next point here is there's really no perfect situation right now. If you look, everybody's talking the Lakers. There's other teams which I've heard recently, but none of these teams make perfect sense for LeBron James. And certainly Cleveland doesn't. But Cleveland's where he's got a $36 million salary next year. So to me, that's where it should be leaning. But your thoughts on LeBron this summer?
Well, if LeBron, I want to give LeBron credit for something, because he gave his teammates credit. He did what a leader does and said, "Look, it's not me. This is my team, right?" But LeBron, and by the way, people say, "Oh, he's 3-8 in finals."
Yeah,
get out of here! Are you kidding me? You're not even paying attention. You're throwing that stuff out there. I became a fan of LeBron this year. Just admired what I knew he was great, but really admired what he did. He played every single game. That's incredible, actually. He played every single game. I just have a tough time seeing him leaving Cleveland.
Yeah.
Right? He is Cleveland. And I think he wants to. I think he's determined to win again in Cleveland. I don't think he's satisfied having just one win in Cleveland. So what I think LeBron's going to do is try to recruit guys to come play with him in Cleveland, because he's not gonna go. I know he's got maybe he can go to the Clippers, but I don't know. I just think you look at everything that LeBron did. He already left and won. Yeah. He did it. So if we're talking about with the Warriors and those players, hey, they won their titles, now they want to go get paid. Well, LeBron's done both in both places. So does he really have the desire to go do it somewhere else? Maybe he does. I think he wants to make it work in Cleveland.
He is the coach, the general manager. Everything in Cleveland is he is, right? I think there may be people in those positions, but it's LeBron. Every decision will go through him. Everything is done through him. In his hometown, in a place that he has this level of comfort. So on one hand, I think that's important. He may not have that ability in other places that he goes to, but here's where I think there's a chance he could leave. I wonder if the next move is to set up the rest of his life. Even though he's incredibly successful as a businessman and all that kinds of stuff, I wonder if LeBron's next move is, okay, I either want to get into the movies, I want to get into venture capital, I want to make life. But
he's already doing that.
I know he is, but It's not that it can't be done in Cleveland, but it can be done a lot more and easier in a place like LA, and I wonder if that's what the decision may be for LeBron, as much about all of those things and the rest of his life as it is for the next 3 years of basketball.
He's already into venture capital, so he can do that from anywhere. He can get on the jet wherever he needs to go. It's not. See, I think if you look at LeBron, what he's done to bolster Cleveland businesses. Going back to Cleveland, he didn't have to go back to Cleveland. He obviously felt like he wronged them, so he went back. And he can look at it and say, well, we haven't won, or he can say, let's try to fix this and get it right. And to me, it just seems more inclined to do that. Kawhi Leonard, right?
Okay.
There's a guy. Can you get Kawhi Leonard to come to Cleveland?
Let me jump in here, actually. So I've heard both of these kind of statements get thrown out around, the national media a little bit here. Do you think he likes being coach, GM, manager, captain only person who scores a point. Do you think that's right?
I think he likes the control over it.
Sure.
Maybe he doesn't like having to deal with all of that. But I think that's the ego of the NBA superstar that, this is what I want. Go it, and I think, Kevin, you'll say that at all levels of professional sports, the stars on the team like to be heard, like to go into the GM's office and says, "I want you to get that guy." I think LeBron loves that part of it. Now, maybe he doesn't want to have to deal with all the other things that go along with it, but I think he likes that part.
I think he's 34. He played every minute of the entire season. He put way more, he put way more out there than he should have needed to in a playoff run based on, the talent that wasn't around him. I think that's got to be miserable for him. He hates losing. Not won.
Sure.
Right.
Yes.
And there is a situation here. There's a situation out there where he can be downplayed a little bit, where he can give some of that control away because there is a coach who has, if not as much, more command than LeBron James on the court. There is one, and it's Greg Popovich.
Yes, I thought that's where you were going.
He's been an Olympic coach with him. He has spoken with him at events. He has been a bit of a mentor, right, to LeBron James over these past 15 years. And LeBron James could take a step back on that team.
And just be coached.
And just be a superstar. And he wouldn't even have to be the best player on the court with Kawhi Leonard, right? I mean, that's a Kyrie Irving type situation, maybe because he's also a little crazy. But that's a situation where those are two immediate superstars with different roles, right? I mean, yeah, they'd have to share the ball coming up the court a little bit, but then you've got a big figure in Greg Popovich on top of it.
Very interesting.
That's sort of the Belichick effect, right?
Yes.
Where these veterans sort of say, I'm done, right? I'm done putting in X hours to get to the conference championships. I want to get this thing through the gate, right? And to me, that is the one team. They've got cap space. They've got a big man in LaMarcus Aldridge. They've got the sort of pieces in place. Nobody's crazy overpaid. Leonard could do a supermax extension here, and we'll know a lot more about this situation if and when he does that, or if he's traded, as you just mentioned.
Is his relationship with them damaged over the injury?
We don't know. It sounds like that there's been communication now. It sounds like there's been some talk. And look at Popovich has an ego. I mean, he's gonna get his way one way or another. And if Kawhi Leonard, isn't coming forward with the right answers, he's gonna be gone.
Last point,
then this is a moot conversation.
Yeah. Last point on what you said, Kevin. Do we think that getting guys to go to Cleveland is a challenge for LeBron, or do they not care where it is? Is it going to be easier to get some of the other stars that LeBron might want to have with him to go to L.A. or some of the other places other than Cleveland?
Have you been to San Antonio?
Yeah, I have been.
Wait,
I know. That's why I'm asking.
It's
Cleveland's
a nice
great city.
They both have great people. What I'm saying is, like San Antonio, it's a large city, but it's not exactly a metropolis.
Cosmopolitan. No.
Well, no, they had the downtown Riverwalk area.
It's a lot like Cleveland.
Yeah, it is. But that's my point. It's
Okay.
a lot like Cleveland. So that
I'm
may
just
appeal,
wondering about that.
That may appeal to them. But the other point of that is, like, they got guys that go to San Antonio.
Well,
so
let me
the city to me doesn't matter.
Let me chime in too, because Cleveland has the worst cap situation of any team in the league right now. So there's no signing people. I mean, it's going to have to be extremely creative to make that team better. Everybody who we saw, underperform in these finals is under contract next year. Everybody, J.R. Smith, Kyle Korver, everybody. So unless you're going to buy people out or find an unbelievable trade partner for these guys, you're not bringing in Chris Paul or Paul George, anybody. The Lakers can do it. The Lakers can do it because they traded with the Cleveland Cavaliers this past season. They opened up roster spots and cap and things like that to be able to bring in superstars. And if LeBron doesn't go there, they're in deep trouble because I don't know who's going there. It sounds like Paul George might not be anymore. It sounds like he's getting fonder and fonder of Oklahoma City and Russell Westbrook.
If LeBron goes, others will go. Right?
This is the summer of LeBron, right? I mean, there's your headline. He will make every other domino fall, but if he doesn't leave, or even if he goes to San Antonio, which, I'm not sure he'd need to bring too many people with him there, maybe one or two.
Right. If he's just looking at, let's go to Paul's,
Sure.
Go back to Paul's point here. If he's trying to set up the rest, if it's
the brand,
LeBron,
sure.
He goes to LA, right?
I think so. Yes, the entertainment industry, the money that's out there, the California innovation, whatever you want to tell me is part of it.
It's the whole brand with Nike and everything. It kicks off a new color scheme, all that stuff. Business-wise, I'm sure his business consultants and agents are saying, go to L.A. I'm sure they're
Lonzo Ball. You're literally in the shadow of Magic Johnson. He's your owner.
I know. I know.
I mean,
but that might be appealing.
Yes.
I don't see it.
Much like Popovich, it might be appealing to not have to be the guy with the spotlight 100% on him all the time.
No, don't kid yourself. It'll be on him big time in Los Angeles.
But I mean, when you have a Magic Johnson around there, he's sharing a little bit of that.
No, I'm sorry, Magic. This will be. We're talking about LeBron James.
I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm saying when Magic is there, there's going to be he's going to steal a little of that.
But what is Magic Johnson besides a basketball legend? He's an entrepreneur.
That's correct.
Right? And
he owns a home there. His kid just signed up for academy out there. I mean, there's a lot pointing him to LA, but I don't think basketball
except
should
for basketball
be one of them.
Yeah.
Right. Well, we've talked about this before. The Clippers would be the team to go to.
Much more of
They've
a blank
cleared the decks
slate
too.
There, right?
They're empty. He could bring whoever we wanted there, but boy, the more I read and the more I hear and the more I sort of think in terms of the finances, I'm gonna guess everybody's gonna go back home. I think Chris Paul is going to stay in Houston. I think Paul George is going to stay in Oklahoma City. I think LeBron is leaning towards Cleveland.
You're no fun.
Isn't that boring as hell?
Yeah, it's boring.
We'll see. It'll still be a lot of money, so visit Spot Track.
Kyrie Irving, by the way.
Oof.
Right?
Speaking of talking.
Right?
So
could they move him back to Cleveland?
He sort of got pulled out of context there because he's sort of saying the same thing I said about Klay Thompson, right? He'd be dumb to sign right now, is all he's saying. He's not saying he's never going to sign an extension in Boston, and we don't even know his role in Boston right now. So certainly he needs a year to sort of see where that all sort of comes together. Look, if it doesn't work, he's going to be gone. I mean, they're going to find a trade partner for him, so that'll be a short leash. But him saying I'm not going to sign there is just I'm not going to do it this year because next year is going to be way better in terms of the money. That's all he's saying. But there's going to be a ton of movement. This is a really exciting league. The money's ridiculous. We're going to see $50 million a year soon. The trades are going to be outrageous in July and even better at the deadline just because of these superstars sort of expiring. There's names we didn't even mention really, but what's going to happen in Philly?
Right.
They're going to need a veteran. How's that all going to sort of play out? There's even talk of LeBron to Boston because Boston can make it work. Boston can actually make that work.
Think he wants to play with Kyrie again?
No way. Well, he wouldn't. That to me that would be one goes the other. But I just can't see that. Right? No. I can't see going from Cleveland to Boston. That just doesn't make any sense in terms of basketball. But we've said a lot about the West here, and we've also talked about how easy this East is.
Yeah.
Right.
You made that point, I think, last week, where you don't want to go to the West because there's too many good teams out there.
Yeah. I mean, Houston and Golden State are going to dominate for 2 more years here. So. To me, it all sort of votes itself back to Cleveland.
How about Milwaukee to team up with the Greek Freak?
That's what I was just thinking. Play with the Freak.
Talk about destroying your brand.
Right? How cool would that be?
That would be cool. All right. Final thing, the app. It's up.
The app is out.
Check out the app.
Yeah, we've had great feedback. A couple of comments on things we needed to kind of clean up, and we've done so with that. And we're happy to take any suggestions you have. The Android app is being developed, so we'll have your Google users will have one soon, very soon, hopefully. But on the app, on the website, on the mobile site, big basketball time of year. So we're going to be following the NBA draft. There's these player options are going to be due June 29th. We'll be tracking those. All the cap and luxury tax information, we're going to keep up to date as much as possible. We are tracking the MLB baseball draft information. They just had, some 600 players get drafted. So as those signing bonuses come in, we are logging those as well on the site. So it's a fun time of year, and the NFL roster cuts are right around the corner. So keep on it.
All right. Mike Giannetti, founder of SpotTrack.com. Paul Peck, Kevin Sylvester. You can find our work at BuffaloSportsPage.com. Thanks for listening for the SpotTrack.com podcast.